Welcome back to Focal Point AFR Talk. Just a little bit on the polling data from yesterday to calm some folks down that got pretty nervous about the conservative cause. The InTrade is a website where people actually bet on how elections are going to turn out. And the trend line for the Ryan Romney, and I call it specifically the Ryan Romney ticket because all the energy in that ticket is with Paul Ryan. He's the only one that's brought any energy to the ticket. But the trend line is upward. It's moving upward. More people now willing to put their money on the Ryan Romney ticket. And I think you've also got another factor here that from this directorblue.blogspot.com by Doug Ross. I'm on this every day. And he makes the point that, look, he's got some trouble in union land. He's got the coal industry. Remember the coal workers union, they came out and said, we are not going to endorse in this election because Barack Obama is out there destroying the coal industry. He's costing them jobs. He's shutting down coal-fired plants, and he's putting these coal miners out of work. And so they're not even endorsing Obama, one of the first unions that refused to endorse him in this election. You got oil workers, a lot of them are unionized. He's shutting down the oil industry, trying to resist it at every turn. You've got trucking unions. I mean, with the economy in the shape it is, it's hurting them and the refining industry. So he's saying, look, you got to understand that union workers have a lot of reasons to be unhappy with Barack Obama. Now, here's the other deal on these polls. You have to look at the breakdown. Now, what pollsters do is they will tell you, if you look into the internals of a poll, the percentages of the population that they poll. How many Republicans, how many Democrats, how many men, how many women, how many independents. But here's the reason that a lot of these polls are looking good for Obama right now is that they're using the 2008 numbers. Now, in 2008, the 41% of voters were Democrats, 34% were Republicans, and 25% were independents. And so they oversampled Democrats by 7-8 points. But the demographics, the enthusiasm level is not the same this year. So if they oversample Democrats, a lot of whom are very unenthusiastic about turning out to vote this year, you're going to get a different result in the polling data. In fact, in 2010, where the Republicans had such major successes, the Democratic participation at the polls was down to 35% from 41%. It was down like by 6.5 points. Republican participation was up from 34% to 36%, and independent participation was up from 25% to 29%. So, and if you look at where the enthusiasm level is this year, the only way a poll is going to be remotely accurate is if the representation in the poll is about 33% Democrat, about 38% Republican. In other words, they ought to oversample Republicans by about 5 points and make sure that about 29% of the polling sample is independents. But a lot of these polls that have Obama in the lead don't have that kind of breakdown. In fact, here's a piece from the Examiner saying that if you had an unskewed CNN poll, that CNN poll was the one that sent shockwaves through everybody, 52-46 Obama. But if the poll is kind of readjusted to reflect more accurately the demographics of people that are actually going to vote, then that same poll would have a 53-45 lead for Romney. In other words, if it was a more accurate poll based on voter participation, it would reverse the findings of that poll. It would go from 52-46 Obama to 53-45 for Romney, because the CNN poll sampled 50% Democrats and 45% Republicans. So it oversampled Democrats by 5, but what we have seen is if it's going to be accurate, it ought to oversample Republicans by 4 to 5 points, and only 4% of the CNN poll were independents. So they're undersampled by about 25%, about 29% of the polling sample ought to be independents. So again, if you start weighting independents properly and you start weighting Democrats and Republicans based on the Rasmussen numbers, then Romney is up 53-45 over Obama. And this is part of what they wanted to obscure. You know, and it looks like the parties have kind of made up their mind. 97% of Democrats favor Obama, 96% of Republicans favor Romney. So the parties are going to be pretty loyal to their candidates. But independents, here's the thing, you got to drill down to get to this, but independents who were grossly undersampled, only 4% of the polling demographic were independents, but they support Romney 54-40. So Romney is up by 14 points among the independents, and remember, it's the independents, everybody says you got to get them, and Romney's way up even in that poll. And Obama has dropped about 25% of his support among Jews. He won that demographic 78-22 in 2008, but now his support has dropped 19 points. He's still up, but it's only 59-35. Now, Ronald Reagan set the benchmark. He got 39% of the Jewish vote in 1980, and Mitt Romney now was sort of closing in on that. He's at 35%. And again, looking at the independents, the precious independents, Washington Post ABC News poll has Romney up by 11 points among independents, and the CNN poll has him up by 14. And there's a real enthusiasm gap. 17% of those, let's see which poll this is. This is the Washington Post ABC News poll. 17% of those who said they were registered voters said they were less than certain to vote. 10% of them said their chances of voting were 50% or less. And these voters, or these polling people, preferred Obama by a long shot. But a lot of them, it's unlikely even that they are going to show up and vote. Now, Mitt Romney, by not hammering Obamacare harder, is potentially squandering support from independents, because independents overwhelmingly want Obamacare repealed. Now, Rasmussen has taken 109 polls since March of 2010, 109 polls. In every single one of those polls, more people want Obamacare repealed than preserved. And independents, by a very striking margin, back in July, independents wanted Obamacare repealed by 19 points, 56-37. By a 27-point margin, 56-29, they thought Obamacare was bad rather than good for the country. So I don't know who is advising Mitt Romney, but going hot and hard after Obamacare and pushing for full repeal, that is a winner in every demographic. Now, Bob Woodward, this is clip 4. Bob Woodward's got a new book out, and he's pretty critical of President Obama's leadership in this book. And here is a brief excerpt of his interview with ABC News' Diane Sawyer about some of the gaps in Obama's leadership. Let's listen.
My conclusion is Presidents Clinton, President Reagan, and if you look at them, can criticize them for lots of things, they by and large worked their will.
And he did not?
On this, President Obama did not.
So he's saying, look, President Obama has not been able to work his will. The great leaders, the Bill Clintons, the Ronald Reagans, the ones that were real decisive and effective presidential leaders, they were able to work their will. This president has not been able to do that. Let's drop down to clip 7. And this is despite the fact that the media is completely in the tank for Barack Obama. Here is a journalist admitting their nostalgia for Clinton and their love affair with Obama, but saying, look, we might be over that love affair. Let's listen.
The extraordinary media reaction to Bill Clinton's speech, even leaving aside all the subplots about Hillary in 2016, says to me, journalists miss the guy.
Yeah, absolutely. There was definitely some nostalgia here.
I think that we know that most reporters are predisposed to be liberal. This is like a flirtation or a love affair. I think that they fell in love with Barack Obama's charisma and speaking skills, and I think that they're let down based on that, not based on the economy not improving. That's my take.
But then now it's like a tedious marriage.
That's what it is, yeah, exactly.
So they're saying, man, the media is falling out of love with Barack Obama. Now let's jump down to clip 9. This is Ellen Ratner. She is the one that ran Radio Row at the DNC or the RNC. She told me that I was her favorite homophobe. She's an open and out lesbian, and she runs Radio Row. Now she wants to be impartial. She wants to provide Radio Row for conservative talk show hosts. That's her job. So she wants to be fair to them. She wants these conservative. She was very fair with me. I was in the booth right next to her. She was very friendly. She was very professional all week. She did everything in her power to give us what we needed. So I have nothing but props for Ellen Ratner and the job she did, even though she's a lesbian, even though she opposes everything I stand for. She was professional, and she gave us all the help that she could. She was great. I got nothing but props for Ellen Ratner for her work on Radio Row. Now, they shut out, the Democratic Party shut out conservative talk show hosts at the DNC, which is one of the reasons I'm glad I didn't go. I didn't go for safety reasons. But the Democrats were not allowing any of their people to interview with conservative radio talk show hosts, and that just teed off Ellen Ratner clip 9. Let's listen.
I got to tell you, they don't book guests. The Democrats do not book guests on Republican shows.
Because they're going to be challenged by a question?
I have no idea why. You can go ask them, but it's a mistake. I've been screaming about it since the mid-'90s, and I've gotten nowhere. And I've been told I will never get anywhere.
So that's Ellen Ratner saying, look, and they would have handlers that would be stationed outside Radio Row at the DNC. Some Democrat would walk up there, and the Democrat was willing to talk to the conservative talk show host, but the handlers would show up and steer them away and say, no, you can't. One talk show host, I think it was Rusty Humphreys or maybe it was Roger Hedgecock from Southern California, they just packed up before the DNC was over because they couldn't get interviews with any of these liberal politicians. I'd like to take your reactions to all this stuff about polling data, your take about the status of the Republican or the presidential campaign right now between Barack Obama, Mitt Romney. Give us a call, 888-589-8840. Tell us what you think about where things are at in the presidential campaign. And do you think if Mitt Romney loses this election, it will be the end of the Republican Party? That's the question. Do you think if the Republican Party loses this election, if Mitt Romney loses, will it be the end of the Republican Party, and will we see a third party arise in its place? Focal Point, AFR Talk.